Carthage had been a world power for centuries, before Rome had even been noticed in the Mediterranean. Carthage feared Rome so little that they allied with the Romans to fend off what they saw as the more powerful enemy, Pyrrhus. Carthage controlled the trading ports all throughout the Mediterranean, and enforced the ports with the largest navy in the Mediterranean, consisting of entirely mercenary troops. Carthage had few citizen soldiers, and simply used its immeasurable wealth to form the majority of its armed forces. The two forces met each other for the first time in Sicily, where Carthage had controlled most of the western portion of the island, and the powerful Greek city-state, Syracuse, controlled the eastern half. However, during a war with Carthage, Syracuse had hired a group of mercenary soldiers, known as the Mamertines, who after fighting the Carthaginians, captured the eastern city known as Messana. Syracuse was furious, and moved against the Mamertines. The Mamertines panicked, and called for help from the Carthaginians. However, it began to become clear to them that they could not trust Carthage for long, and they called to Rome for assistance. The ancient enemies, Carthage and Syracuse, allied together to defeat the new force. Carthage blockaded the city by sea, and Syracuse blocked it by land. Rome burst through the two and saved Messana. Rome would then send 2 full consular armies to Syracuse to force them to ally to Rome, and secured the eastern half of Sicily. Rome would then move on to establish a foothold in central Sicily, at the city of Agrigentum. Rome formed a blockade around the city for 5 months, but just as the city began to face serious starvation, Carthaginian reinforcements from Africa had cut off the Roman supply routes from Syracuse. After letting the Romans starve, Agrigentum could not hold out any longer, and demanded the Carthaginian army to fight the Romans. The Romans won a huge victory, and the Carthaginians were forced to flee. The Romans entered the city and secured a foothold in central Sicily. When the Romans returned home, they used a beached Carthaginian warship they found on the coast of Sicily and reverse engineered the ship to create a new navy. Rome could now step out of Italy in earnest. The result was several upsets on the islands off the north coast of Sicily. The overconfident Carthaginians attempted to crush the newly created Roman fleet and were defeated in battle after battle. Several western Sicilian cities revolted in favor of Rome, and the future of Sicily began to become clear. Total Roman domination was imminent, but Rome began to believe that they could achieve total victory by bringing the fight to the Carthaginians and invading Africa. Rome constructed a new fleet for this task. The massive Roman fleet of 330 ships met the Carthaginians' 350 ships. The largest naval battle in history to take place up to that point would take place at the Battle of Cape Economus. The Romans crushed the fleet and moved on to Africa, and continued to defeat the armies Carthage could muster. But when they were near to Carthage itself, the Carthaginians resorted to hiring Xanthippus, a Spartan general, to defeat the Romans. Xanthippus marched on the encroaching Romans and defeated them, sending the Romans back to the coast to flee from Africa. After rebuilding a new fleet, the Romans lost yet another crushing defeat, this time at the hands of nature itself, losing most of the fleet in a violent storm. Carthage seized the opportunity and pushed down the west coast of the island. The Brazilian Romans constructed another fleet and attempted to capture the key city of Lilybaeum, but they were repulsed. The Romans then moved on to successfully raid Africa, but yet again, they had most of their fleet destroyed in a large storm. However, the Romans continued to make gains in northern Sicily, despite the wrath of nature. The Romans put the city of Lilybaeum at siege yet again, and after several back-and-forth victories, and yet another storm destroying Rome's fleets, Carthage sent Hamilcar Barca to secure Sicily. Hamilcar deployed hit-and-run tactics to delay the Romans, and was winning several small victories. Carthage amazingly decided to focus on the northern coast of Africa, rather than rebuilding a fleet to take Sicily. Rome constructed another fleet, and easily defeated Carthage in the Battle of the Gates Islands. Hamilcar fled Sicily, and Rome finally controlled all of Sicily. However, Carthage had found itself in an impossible position. After paying Rome the gigantic war reparations, the mercenaries who had fought with them in Sicily demanded their payment. The mercenaries revolted after being dissatisfied with what Carthage had gave them, and it seemed that Carthage would fall. But just as doom was assured, Hamilcar was reinstated to put down the men. But after several successes, Carthage lost more and more allies, until the rebels put Carthage itself to siege. The only place Carthage could turn to was Rome. Rome accepted and helped Carthage, wanting Carthage to live to pay the rest of the war reparations. With supplies coming by sea from Rome, Hamilcar could push out and defeat the rebels. He wiped out the rebels and reunited northern Africa under Carthage. Carthage then looked out to reacquire Sardinia, which had revolted along with the mercenaries in Africa. They looked to Rome to help, but Rome decided to seize Sardinia and Corsica from Carthage, and told Carthage that if they attempted to take the islands, it would mean war. Carthage forfeited the islands, but Hamilcar, who had become the most powerful man in Carthage, knew the war with Rome would come. Hamilcar decided that if Carthage was to become powerful enough to defeat Rome, it would need more territory. So he set off with his son, Hannibal, to conquer the new territory. While there, in one of the most famous events to take place in the battle between Carthage and Rome, Hamilcar held his 9-year-old son above a fire and made him promise to never be a friend of Rome. Hannibal responded, "I swear, so soon as age will permit, I will use fire and steel to arrest the destiny of Rome." Come back next week for the final Punic Wars.